I really believe in having an independent central bank. I mean, that's core to our system. The system has served us well. We are the world's financial leader. Our systems are the best. Our courts are the best. We have stability that other countries dream of, and a lot of it because of an independent central bank. But that doesn't mean that Jerome Powell is exempt from criticism. In 2008, Congress set up basically an oversight committee on monetary policy. I sit on the Monetary Policy Committee today, and there's going to be an exchange of ideas. There hasn't been a president in the last 40 years that has ever not disagreed with the chairman of the Federal Reserve. That's how this works. Now, the president reaffirmed yesterday that no, he was not going to fire Jerome Powell. He has his opportunity next spring, and the American people, by and through him, will appoint somebody. But I think, just the stock market report you got there, Americans are optimistic about where this economy is going, and you can see it in our stock market.
Well, Congressman, President Trump may have suggested yesterday it's not his intention right now to fire the chairman. He said it's highly unlikely, but he did suggest the chair still may need to go if there's evidence of fraud, something that the FHFA chair, Bill Pulte, is suggesting around the renovations of the Federal Reserve building here in Washington. He's pushing Congress for an investigation into that. Would you be supportive of such an investigation?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways that it can be investigated outside of Congress. Certainly, we won't walk away from our role in oversight. I simply don't know enough about this building project. I know that Jerome Powell is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. It's an independent central bank. It's going to remain that way. If there are these allegations and if they are substantiated, then, of course, it will be investigated in the due course. But I think we have to keep our eye on the ball. The ball is the American economy. The ball is our eye should be on the stock market. Things are going well, and if we can land these planes in Washington with the big bill, obviously, and the successive legislative priorities we have, we're going to end this year and set America up for explosive growth in 2026.
Well, Congressman, I want to pull on some of your expertise here because you do lead the subcommittee on housing. Kayleigh mentioned we had Bill Pulte on the show yesterday, and he's blaming Jerome Powell when it comes to mortgage rates. But we also know that the Fed can't control things like supply constraints. I'm wondering what you make of the administration's argument on this one. Is this a sustainable argument down the line when it does come to the criticism of the Fed chair?
Well, let's talk about housing in America. We are in a bad spot right now for a number of reasons. We are 5 million units short. That's what the realtors say. That's what the home builders say. So yes, we do have a supply issue. At the same time, because of weather peril and third-party litigation, we have property and casualty insurance skyrocketing. So now for a lot of homeowners, their property taxes plus their insurance premiums are more than their principal and interest. When I bought a home back in, 2004 for the first time, my interest rate was 8.5%. We've seen this before. We want it to go down. Everybody wants to have low interest rates. I get it. But to say that housing is in peril because of the interest rate, I think that's a really narrow perspective, because there are so many other issues out there, most notably supply.
Well, it's great to have your insight on that, Congressman, given your purview on that subcommittee. I want to talk about something else that falls obviously under the broader jurisdiction of financial services, where we saw the initiation of some of the crypto bills that we're expecting the House to vote on for final passage just hours from now. It's been hard fought to get to this point. I thought that roll vote yesterday might stay open forever, Congressman. The votes do seem to be there for the Genius Act, which of course was already passed by the Senate, but for the Clarity Act, even if you can get the votes today, what future do you think that realistically has in the Senate in terms of bipartisan cooperation? What are you hearing from your colleagues in the other chamber?
Well, first of all, what I hear from my constituents in Nebraska all the time is they want to see us work in a bipartisan way to deliver results for the American people and to solve problems. I bet you when the Clarity Act is presented to the House of Representatives later today, there will be at least, or maybe as many as 70 Democrats If we can send clarity over to the House with 70 Democratic votes, plus all of the Republicans, I think that makes an excellent case for getting to 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. It sends it to President Trump's desk, and America can take its rightful spot at the very epicenter of stablecoins and digital assets and market structure. All of this has been in works for several years, but for some complications in the last couple of months, we could have even more than 70 votes in the House among Democrats. So we're on a good trajectory. I know that if you're watching the debate, you're only seeing the naysayers on the Democratic side, but trust me, there are a lot of people, and one person I encourage you to really watch her vote is former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I'm told even she sees the value in the Clarity Act and sending that over to the Senate. So we're on a pretty good path over here. It never looks pretty. It's always made for TV when you watch the floor of the House, but it's going to get done, and we're going to have it by this weekend.
Well, Congressman, we know Wall Street is watching this debate, and stablecoins have actually made their way into the discussion on a series of recent earnings calls. We had J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup describing the upstart of the digital dollar as a potential threat to the banking industry's grip on payments, and signaled that they're prepared to respond. I'm wondering what reassurances that you could give to banks that perhaps there's nothing to fear here.
Well, we worked with the American Bankers Association throughout this entire process. I was actually, as a state legislator, made Nebraska the second state in the nation to allow state-chartered banks to custody digital assets. Listen, our stablecoins only work, in my opinion, they only work around the world if most of them are custodied in American banks, where one stablecoin equals $1 US in an FDIC-insured bank. That gives me comfort that we are going to be the world's leader in stablecoins. We have to make sure that banks are intricately involved in this. This is the business that they've been in for hundreds of years in our country. I have a strong interest in making sure it works in sync with the banking community. And as it relates to these de novo charters and some of the things that you see people come forward with, it all requires capital. What do banks have? Banks have capital. Banks understand how this works. They're regulated. They have all sorts of different safeguards. They are very aware of know your customer and all the consumer protections. We bet big on stablecoins if banks engage and banks take the lead, and that's what I want.
Congressman, I'd like to also ask you about Recisions, as the Senate, of course, was able to pass a $9 billion, slightly shrunk Recisions package with funding cuts to PBS and NPR, as well as USAID last night. I assume you and your colleagues will be taking that up either this evening or tomorrow in the House. But Democrats are suggesting that this has complicated an effort to be bipartisan in the appropriations process as we approach the end of the fiscal year in September. As a result of passage of this Recisions package, sir, has the odds of a government shutdown increased?
Well, I don't think Recisions has anything to do with it. Look at the continuing resolution we passed in March. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, he did the right thing. He made sure the Senate funded the government. And what happened to him? In the course of a week, he lost 12 percentage points among Democratic voters in New York. AOC is talking about running against him for Senate in New York. And Chris Murphy was outwardly threatening to take him down as the Senate leader. Listen, they're in no mood to be bipartisan. They are in no mood, I'm guessing, to work on the budget. But to your point, we have to. We have no other choice.
Well,
one thing I think is
what they're saying, though, is what's the point of reaching an appropriations deal if in a partisan manner you can just rescind funding you already agreed to? You don't see that point?
Well, here's the distinction I want to make on the PBS funding. Now, I looked into this a lot because my home state has a very good public broadcasting system, both in TV and radio and digital. We are not dissolving the funding forever. We are taking the money for public television off automatic pilot 2 years in a row. We will still have to decide what funding PBS, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, gets in the budget that we craft and hopefully pass by October 1st. That is the specific impact of Recisions on the PBS funding. Now, I can't comment on all the other programs that are in there. I know some money for AIDS was put back in for HIV situations, but you know, I hear you. I know. I understand the argument. I just don't think you can tie it to just rescissions. I think this is the Democrats' base does not want to see them working with Republicans. The Democrats' base is telling their supporters to go to our town halls and get arrested, to go to our town halls and physically confront members of Congress. It's a very different, aggressive approach that I'm sure many traditional Democrats don't agree with, but their party is in no mood to see a lot done in a bipartisan manner. I am very hopeful that we can do that. I'm working with my Democratic counterpart very well on housing supply issues in my subcommittee, so I know it can happen. I just hope it does happen.